on, but we know that it's what keeps kids in placement. It's what keeps kiddos from, once they enter the foster care system, from being re-traumatized over and over and over again, is because we keep them in that first home and we let them build strong attachments, and we make sure that that placement stays intact.
Welcome back to the Because Adulting is Hard podcast. I'm Alita, and I'm super excited about our guest today. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization?
Sure. My name's Amanda Boyd, and I'm with the Sanctuary Foster Care Services. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I got involved in foster care and how I started and all of that. Since I was little, I always knew I was going to be involved in foster care some way. And even when I dated anyone, any guy on the second date, my question was, hey, you think you might want to adopt someday? And if they said yes, then we continued. If they said no, then I was like, well, I guess this relationship is done because they're not for me. And so my husband, he said yes. And so we moved forward with that. And now he has a joke. He's like, I should have asked how many, because we have so many. And so I became a foster parent about 10 years ago. We got our first sibling group of 3. And since then we've grown our family to, we've actually adopted 5 kiddos, and we're in the process of adopting our 6th. And we have 8 kids total. And so that's kind of how I got into it. Was really my first 3. My daughter that we got, they were 5, 9, and 11. And my 11-year-old daughter was very, very challenging and very difficult. And so at that point I saw how the system was failing, not only the kids, but how it was also failing the foster parents. And then later on, every single time the Lord taught me something different about, with each new kid that we got, about a different area that the system was broken. And so with that, he put me in touch with a whole bunch of other incredible people that had the same passion that I did for foster care and for fixing the broken system. And we decided to step out and start the sanctuary.
And then you end up places like here, because anybody that's been following us and following me on Because Adulting is Hard has heard me tell this story. Not only was I a product of the foster care system, but it is absolutely my passion and exactly what you're talking about. When I've worked in residential treatment, the failing of the system for these children. I mean, it is not just it is not, we all said it's not all just sunshine and roses. It's just not. But that's what I love about this organization that you're going to talk to us about. So the sanctuary is actually located here in Webster. It's a little bit different. People that have been following us have heard us talk a lot about Kids Harbor, because we're actually very involved with Kids Harbor. This is a different setup, and this is a really cool setup for long-term placements. And it is really bridging the gap between what CPS does and the services they provide to families to make them long-term fit. So talk to me a little bit about the organization and how you're serving kids right now differently than other organizations.
Okay, great. Sure. The Sanctuary, what it is we are a child placement agency. So basically what that means is we recruit foster parents, and then we train them. And then after we train them, we get referrals from CPS, and we call the foster parents and we ask them, hey, are you interested in placement of this particular kiddo? And we tell them about the kiddo. And if they say yes, then we let CPS know, and then we place the kiddo in the home. And then after we do that, then we provide overall wraparound support for the family. So, and what that means is it comes with physical things as far as clothing. In fact, when a child is placed, the foster parents, they have a meal train for the first 2 weeks of placement to make sure that that's not what they have to worry about. We make sure that they have resources for clothing. But the main thing that we do is we provide 24-hour in-home crisis intervention. And what that means is, these kiddos, they have trauma, Lita.
They are coming to the table with trauma. I mean, that's why they're here. They've been taken out of their home.
Yes.
They have been abused. Yeah. I mean, I love the push in our church and in our churches and in our community. Oh, we should all foster. But the reality is it's hard.
It's going to turn your world upside down.
And it is not an easy thing. So providing support, tell me what that looks like around the care.
No problem. So what it means is if you have a child that's melting down in your home, and when I talk about these kiddos melting down, it's just not, throwing a little fit that's going to be over in 20 minutes. Sometimes they're hour-long tantrums that they have. Sometimes they're going to hit you or bite you, or they're going to punch a hole in your wall.
Destruct property. It's going to happen.
Yes.
That's a thing.
And so what we do is they call us on the phone. We come into the home, and we have our clinician, our crisis intervention person, who's also a therapist, that comes in the home and de-escalates the kiddo. And the parents watch. So first they watch her de-escalate the kiddo. Then after they watch her de-escalate the kiddo and they feel comfortable, then she invites them into the de-escalation process, and they do it together. And then after that, then they call, and she comes in, and then she coaches them on how to do it themselves. themselves. And then after that, then when they feel comfortable, then they call her on the phone and she's listening to the tantrum and listening to them de-escalate and all of that until they're comfortable enough with it and know how to do it. And then she can back out and then just check on them monthly to make sure that the placement is staying stable.
The thing that's most impressive about it is this is where the hole in dropping kids off. Like, I mean, as a former school administrator as well, kids have meltdowns at school. They call the parent, they have no idea. And they're asking them to be an advocate for the child at school when they don't even know how to be an advocate for the child at home.
Right? And so they're in over their heads because they just don't have a clue because they've never dealt with this. And the thing that we saw is honestly, one of the biggest things we do is we help the foster parents know how to control their own bodies. Because when they see a child and the child is throwing a huge major tantrum or biting or kicking or holes or whatever, their body, the foster parent's body registers this as a threat.
And that fight or flight thing, it's a thing.
Fight or flight, exactly.
It's the same thing as it is for the child as it is for the adult.
Exactly. It happens with the adult. And so they go to the brainstem, then they respond inappropriately to the child, which makes the situation worse.
And in behavior units, we train de-escalation strategies. But when you're talking about foster parents, this is not typically what is done. This is absolutely out of the norm.
Out of the norm.
It is very, very out of the norm.
Yes, very much so.
And so crisis intervention is one of them. Also, probably just, advocacy into school, things like that is things that y'all provide services for?
Yes, absolutely, we do. So if we have a child, for instance, we had a foster parent today that the kiddos were placed right before Thanksgiving break. Okay. And so they're having some issues at home and they're concerned that they might have issues at the school. And so what we told the foster parent to do is if the school starts calling a lot, to give the school our information, and then we would talk to them. We'd go into ARDS. We would do the trauma training with the teachers that have the kiddos to help them understand what's going on with them. And even we have responded to schools and daycares before too to de-escalate children in schools and daycares.
That is huge, because I always say when I'm working with foster families is that the number one reason children are sent back into the system is because the school is not equipped and the parent is not equipped to deal with the school and know that these are the laws. We're not asking you, we're telling you this is what we're going to do with this child. And this is how. So that is huge reasons why organizations like yours are needed. So if somebody's interested, obviously that's what we're going to go into. So there's going into the holiday season. Not even just the holiday season. It's a year-round need. Right. Talk to me a little bit about what are some of the basic needs, because we just had a conversation at the beginning of this where I said, I am not equipped to have foster children. I know that about myself. I have 2 children of my own. It is not my calling, but I can guarantee you there are 101 other ways that I can advocate for these kids, and I can do things that are just as important as direct care for these children. So talk to me a little bit about that.
For sure. There's lots of different ways to get involved. So one is we are always needing volunteers. We have events. We have a 5K that's coming up in the spring, and we're going to need volunteers to come and help with that 5K as part of our fundraiser. We also have events for the kiddos. So currently right now we have an art day every month, and you could come and volunteer at the art day. And then starting at the beginning of the year, we're going to have a field day where they're going to be fishing and dancing, and then field day activities too. And so we would love people to come and volunteer there or provide meals for those different events, things like that. So you can get involved that way. There's also respite providers, and this is a way to provide direct care, but not provide direct care at the same time.
Let's define that, because I know what that is, but I don't know that our listeners will know what that is.
And so what a respite provider is it's someone who does short-term care for the kiddos so that the foster parents can have a break. Because foster parents, you just can't send a foster kiddo to anyone. They have to have certain criteria. They have to have background checks run, CPR first aid, those kind of things. And so they provide that break. We also need babysitters, because babysitters can come into the foster parent's home for up to 8 hours and watch the kiddos for them. And that's even a less strenuous process. All that is CPR first aid and background checks. And that's it, to be a babysitter. So all of those are ways. And then also we need financial support as well too, because the amount of support that we provide is not typical, as you know, you were talking about. It is
far
not
above,
typical.
far above.
It's far above and beyond, but we know that it's what keeps kids in placement. It's what keeps kiddos from, once they enter the foster care system, from being re-traumatized over and over and over again, is because we keep them in that first home and we let them build strong attachments, and we make sure that that placement stays intact.
And that is so vital if we're actually talking about long-term stability. I tell people at 42 years old, I still struggle with trauma that was done to me as a very, very young child. So getting that stabilization process, done early,
Yes.
and making them feel secure and loved. I mean, we talk about basic needs of people all the time, and one of them is safety and security, and that's what you're talking about providing here.
Yeah.
So church organizations, are you looking for groups or just individuals all the way around?
We're looking all the way around. We would love to have individuals. Okay. We also have like the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts that come in and will do different projects. We have churches that are involved too. Two of our main supporters are the Harbor and Clear Creek Community Church, also Risen Nation. They just really come around us. And then we have businesses as well too. So we have a realtor, for instance, that every house he sells, he gives the sanctuary $250 of every house. And so he actually is one of the leaders of our business team that goes out and gets businesses together to help figure out ways to support the community, which is us, the sanctuary, supporting the most vulnerable kids.
You absolutely are. So we are going to hook up all of the things, but what are the ways that we're going to hook it up above on this podcast? What are the ways that people can get in contact with you? I know you have a website. I know you have direct donation. And then I would love some information on how you get businesses involved in doing that, because obviously that's what area that I'm interested in.
Great. But yes, you can go to our website at www.sanctuaryfostercare.org, or you can contact me directly on my cell phone at 409-539-0170, or we're on Facebook as well too. So we'd love for you to get on Facebook and like our page, the Sanctuary Foster Care Services, so you can stay up to date with all of the things that we have going on.
And how many kids do you have right now currently?
We currently have 33. And we've only been open since April of this year. So we're a brand new organization that's open. We have a lot of heart and a lot of passion behind it, and we know what we're doing. We're just have only been open since COVID. So you can imagine how hard that's been.
And I can see that. I've also interviewed a lot of people, and I've worked with a lot of people in the CPS system. You absolutely have what it takes to advocate for what's right for children, because you're right. The things that you're saying and the things that you're doing, it's almost a glamorous, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but it's almost a glamorous thing that they put out there. Oh my gosh, look, you can be a foster parent.
I know.
And God is calling you to do it. But you really need to know you
better not think that it's going into it thinking it's going to be puppies and kittens and rainbows and sunshine, because it's not. And then you're going to get let down, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what did I get into? Or this is not what I signed up for. And so in our pre-service training classes and our training, we go in depth, very deep about all of the things that you might see. So we actually prepare you for the absolute worst that you might see. And then we're just like, and hope for the best.
And that's the way that it should be, because if we want
Otherwise,
long-term placements, yes, you're hurting kids,
right?
And you're not by any intention, but you are, and by a default in the system, because we're not providing enough services because it's expensive. I'm really, really impressed by you and by this organization. I appreciate you coming on the show, and we look forward to doing some other things with you in the future.
All right, I just want everybody to remember that, not everyone is called to foster, and we recognize that, but everyone can do something. Everyone can get their hands dirty and jump in and help to make sure that these kiddos are taken care of and advocated the way they should be.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you so much coming on the podcast, and we will have all of your information linked above so that we can make connections for you in the community. And remember, y'all, to live happier, because adulting is hard, and this is a great organization to support.